The upcoming cuts to federal workers, including those who work at Statistics Canada, have raised concerns among researchers.
Cuts at an organization like Statistics Canada is an indication that our country is getting poorer, and we can't afford.
So you might remember this clip. This was Munir Sheikh last week, former chief statistician at StatsCan. And in the next 3 years, Ottawa has announced they want to save 15% of its annual StatsCan expenses by reducing the frequency of data collection and adopting new tools to improve workflow. So for a closer look at what this means for our Canadian researchers, I'm joined by Erica Moody, professor of biostatistics at McGill University. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I just want to remind everybody, here's how the government framed the cuts in this last budget. They said the frequency of data collection will be reduced where the requirements can be met through statistical modeling or other modern methods. In addition, adjustments will be made to the frequency and level of detail collected for data sets which demonstrate less relevance to Canadians. So a couple questions for you here, but let's start with modern methods. Is that AI, and why does that matter to research, whether or not it's AI or done by a person?
Well, it may be AI. In fact, for the last 2 to 3 years, many national statistics offices, including Statistics Canada, have been using AI-assisted tools to collect data. I'm not so concerned about this side of the cuts that were announced, because this has been tested and rigorously vetted across many different platforms and many different national statistics offices. But this includes things like web scraping, so trying to obtain data from posted prices, using large language models to summarize PDF documents, for example, and extract relevant information. I'm not so concerned about the automation side, because this is being done very rigorously and with good oversight.
What's your major concern?
The reduction in the frequency and level of detail of data collection worries me greatly.
Yeah, I want to remind everybody about that part of the statement. This is the second part of that statement that is concerning. Adjustments made to frequency, level of detail, and demonstrates less relevance to Canadians. So when you hear less detail and who gets to decide the relevance, explain to me how that impacts your field.
To be honest, it's really hard to say. There hasn't been any more detail provided in what data will be less frequently collected, or what will be lacking in detail. You know, Statistics Canada data touches everyday Canadians in ways they don't understand or realize. Stats Canada data gets used to determine things like where transit lines go, where new hospitals or new schools are built. They're also used by small businesses to determine where to open, for example, a new store or a new restaurant. On my side, they're used by a lot of students to do research. So I have students using the Canadian Community Health Survey data to try to understand the relationship between depressive scores and mental health service utilization. So it really touches certainly researchers, but also everyday Canadians, because so many policymakers and even small businesses use the data collected by Statistics Canada.
If there is a significant reduction in data collection, where else will Canadians be able to find it?
That is a really good question. You know, the Canadian context is so different from the context of our neighbors to the south. So I wouldn't want to rely on American or European data, for example, because we have a different healthcare system. We have a different population mix. We have a different urban-rural divide. So it's really important to continue to collect Canadian data to understand our Canadian context.
You bring up a really good point. Broader spectrum, if we're looking at the reduction of research and data collection south of the border, whether or not it's, different parameters, and we're looking at a reduction here in Canada, what are the broader implications of that?
That is a great question. I think it's unlikely that Statistics Canada would reduce the frequency or the level of detail used to measure core indicators like GDP or unemployment. What worries me more is a reduction in the frequency or level of detail in the community surveys that Stats Canada conducts. And those touch all sorts of things like daycare and childcare utilization, health, nutrition, mental health among youth. I mean, really important Canadian data. These surveys are done roughly every 2 years. If that were stretched to even every 5 years, we might miss important contexts.
Our producers reached out to Statistics Canada and to Canada's Finance Ministry for their reaction to concerns that are being raised. Both of them directed us back to the wording in the current budget. So I guess my last question to you is, what concerns you about the fact that this decision seems firm, and how are you going to navigate around it?
You know, at this stage, it's very hard to say because we just don't know what data are going to be reduced in frequency. As I said, I'm not too alarmed about the automation. I think that's being done with rigor and care and adequate oversight by my colleagues at Statistics Canada. But I do worry much more about the data that are being collected from surveys and whether that will still be available to do the sorts of research that Canadians are interested in seeing to make sure that we have optimal healthcare delivery, that we have the services that we need throughout the country.
Erica Moody, professor of biostatistics at McGill University. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.